Welcome to another edition of College Basketball Net Profit Pub Sports Radio, Thursday, December 1st. Ian Cameron, Connor Mack, ready to break it down on a Thursday. It's a small slate, but actually there's a lot of nice major Power 5 conference games tonight that'll be interesting to talk about. Shorter number of games, but still a lot of interesting games tonight on the card. So we will jump right into it, and we will get it started with Oklahoma State taking on UConn. We've got the Connecticut Huskies laying about 9 in this game currently as home favorites. Total 135.5 pretty much across the board in this one. UConn has certainly played excellent to start the season, undefeated, 8-0 straight up, 7-0-1 against the spread, almost flawless too from a ATS perspective. Only a 20-point win against Buffalo where they pushed the number there, minus 120 or minus 20. They won by 20. That's the only time they did not cash a ticket for their backers. So they played some really good basketball. I'm a little bit leery of this spot, however, for UConn. They're coming back from the West Coast where they played in Portland at those Phil Knight legacy tournaments that took place out there last week. So it's coast-to-coast travel back home. You know, you almost have to talk about this spot for UConn like you would an NHL or an NBA team, right? When they come back home off a long road trip, West Coast road trip for the East team, or a West or East team coming back from a West Coast trip, vice versa. I always worry about that spot. The first game back, you're not quite as sharp. You don't play nearly as well. I'm actually leaning against UConn here tonight with Okie State getting the 9 in this one. Oklahoma State's not a bad basketball team. They're pretty solid. I like the way they have started the season at the defensive end of the floor. That could trouble UConn. UConn's been good defensively too, but UConn's really been shooting the ball well. Oklahoma State's been pretty good at defending the three, defending overall, 15th ranked defensive field goal percentage in the country. You know what I like about the Cowboys as well is they have balance with John Michael Wright, Avery Anderson, Bryce Thompson. I mean, they really do a good job of spreading the wealth, balancing out the offense. They don't rely on one go-to scorer every single night. So UConn could be, you don't have to just shut down and focus on one guy. To play defense, you have to have the energy level high to play elite defense, which UConn has. But will they have it coming back from that long trip from Portland? I'm not so sure. And this is laying a big number, and Oklahoma State is not chopped liver. And I think we're also seeing the fact that UConn's gotten off to this blistering start. Betting markets and odds makers are starting to adjust the power rating on UConn to the point now where they might just be a little bit overvalued tonight. So if I were to play this one, I'd lean to the road underdog here, Oklahoma State. What do you think here, Connor Mack, Oklahoma State, UConn? I'd probably lean to the under as well.
Yeah, let's touch on that real quick. I took it last night, 138.5, and it didn't really move. But when I woke up, it was down to 134. It's moved up though to 135, 135.5. I think the Cowboys, if you like them in this, you like the under. They gotta, I think, muck this. You know what you mentioned, which is just crazy. UConn's just shot the ball so well from all facets. With the free throw line, they've been great. From three, they've been efficient, and they've been great defensively. So that's why these big wins have happened against solid teams. Yeah, it's just a side I don't want to take. 10.5, I kind of leaned to Oklahoma State and would maybe take those points. But right now, I don't want to mess with UConn, how hot they are. But you mentioned kind of a spot here after that, back home. And maybe they're a little sleepy early. As UConn, but I think the under is the way to go here. Even at 135.5, I give that a lean.
All right, leaning toward I agree with that. For totals wise, I think we're going to get two teams that are really playing well defensively at that end of the court. So I definitely lean under. I don't lean under in this next game, which should be a good game. Creighton and Texas right now. We've got Texas 7-point favorites, 140 the total. I mean, to me, I understand both of these teams can be capable defensively, but under Chris Beard, Texas can be. Creighton, I think, defensively is also capable basketball team, but these two teams are lighting it up offensively. I mean, Creighton and Texas coming into this game, you're talking about 8th and 9th in the country, respectively, field goal percentage shooting teams. Just been terrific from outside, from inside the arc. They've been just tremendous offensively, and we're talking 140, with this total here. It's not like we're asking for a shootout between these two teams. We're just looking for, these two teams to score the amount of points that they've pretty much done all season long. Creighton's done it against some good competition as well. You put up 76 against Texas Tech's defense. You put up 90 against Arkansas, 79 against Arizona. Like, these are really good basketball teams they're playing. This is a really good offensive team that Creighton has. Definitely better at that end of the floor, I think, than last year from what we've seen so far from them. I mean, they've got Ryan Nemhard, who's an outstanding point guard, Trey Alexander, Baylor Shireman has been really red hot to start the year. The big guy, Ryan Kalkbrenner, right around the rim, can finish. So just a lot of weapons to deal with here if you're Texas tonight trying to face this Creighton team. But on the flip side, when you look at Texas, obviously they have been shooting well. They've got the dynamic, explosive scorer, Marcus Carr, Tyrese Hunter running the points, been doing it at a very high level. Dylan Mitchell, the Utah transfer, Timmy Allen, pretty dangerous as well for Texas. So I think there's more than enough weapons and options offensively here going into this game between these two teams, even though both, I think, have stepped up a little bit at times defensively. They're shooting well. And again, we're talking this total being 140. I think it gets over that number. Sidewise, it's a tough game. I mean, I'd rather not fade either one of these teams right now. They're both playing extremely well. I guess I'd lean to Texas slightly just because of how it sets up from a spot perspective for Creighton coming back home after the Maui Invitational. This will be their first game after the Maui Invitational, and it's been like a 10-day layoff for them too. So will they be sluggish? Potentially. So for that reason, I'd lean Texas, but I'm not in a rush to lay 7 against this Creighton team, even with the layoff and the concerns flying in off the Maui tournament. What do you think here, Connor?
Yeah, sidewise, let's get on it. This seems either way. I was high on Creighton, and I've been impressed, like you ran through, against the teams they played and the way they've been able to score. This team just can flat score and shoot it. You went through it. Nemhard, Kalkbrenner, very good. All of these guys, they stretch the floor and get easy shots, and they're very efficient. Texas, we haven't really seen, the Gonzaga win was very, very good. But, Northern Arizona, some lighter wins there. But they're at home here. That's why I just think this place will be pumped. So I could see Texas covering this slightly over 6.5, 7 number. But I keep going back. I want Creighton, in the end. It's just a lean. I haven't bet this. I've looked at this all day long. I kind of want to lean with them. The total's interesting. Public's on the over. But all the money's on the under here. Most of it that I see the big bets. So difficult one. The more I think about it, maybe this is under. If Texas defense comes to play, it will say under and they'll win. It's forcing Creighton to bad shots and they won't get anything done. But if Creighton is able to score and get in the 70s, this will go over, I think. Yeah. So the total's interesting as well. I mean, tough one here.
All right, Arizona, Utah now as we head out to the Pac-12. We've got Arizona 6.5 point road favorites. The total in this one, 154.5. This is a real tough one from a side perspective. Like, for me, I don't know if I can get in the way of this Arizona Wildcats team. They look phenomenal. They just look outstanding to begin the year. They are also, though, coming in off the Maui Invitational, just like we talked about, now with Creighton. This will be their first game since that tournament. It's been a long layoff. Will they be on their game? But, man, I mean, they've been just so damn impressive. Kirk Risa, he's already making a case for the most improved point guard in the country early on. Last year, his shooting was kind of frustrating. Like, he could do all the other things, pass, facilitate, run the show offensively, but his shooting was just way too inconsistent up and down. He's finally shooting the ball quite a bit better this year, especially from the perimeter. Courtney Ramey is as if this team needed more offense with how fast they play. They bring in Courtney Ramey as a transfer in the offseason. They've got Azuolas Tubelis continues to just be one of the better bigs in the country, and then Omar Ballo right behind him too. I mean, they've got two guys, right, two twin towers in the low post that are just outstanding. Great footwork too. They move so well for big guys, because if you're going to play for Arizona as a front court player, you've got to run the floor. You've got to be in good condition. You've got to be good stamina, good cardio, and you've got to be able to run that floor. Tommy Lloyd demands it, and man, these guys really do that at a high level. So it's fun basketball to watch. There's never a time when I'm like, oh, Arizona, not a fun game, not an exciting team to watch. Never. Not since Tommy Lloyd's been there. This has been a fun basketball team, playing excellent, undefeated on the season. And a lot of their wins are coming by margin, except for the Creighton win. That was the one close game. But, they destroy San Diego State in the second half, roll to victory there. They end up beating Cincinnati by 8. They crushed their first 3 opponents that were undermanned. I'm not really looking to get in Arizona's way. That being said, the spot's a little dubious, and Utah is a tough home court. And that's always the one thing that kind of shies me away from betting against Utah at home. But I don't know how good Utah is yet. They played LIU, they played Bakersfield, they played Idaho State, they played pretty much a sisters of the poor schedule so far. They played Sam Houston State 10-point favorites at home last month and lost by 10. Very unimpressive win by the skin of their teeth against Georgia Tech, as well. And then in their last game, you can't put much stock into it, St. Thomas. They blow them out 95-66. I'd probably more look at the over in this game rather than a side. I'd honestly take Arizona before I take Utah, but I do respect how the Huntsman Center can be a little bit of a tricky home court there in Salt Lake City. I just don't know if Utah's ready for this Arizona team, and I certainly have no clear-cut indication yet Utah's on Arizona's level. I'm not so sure they are. What do you think here, Conor, Arizona, Utah?
Let's get to it in a sec. Let's hit up the chat, though. NJ Striker, or our star child, T-Mac up in here. Bama Boy, Mike M, Nunya, Mac, Rocco Rogers, Justin, good to see you. Jay Peasy, that guy. Chili Dog Dooley, he's going to be at the game. This Cleveland State, Oakland. Right on, my man. Who else is up in here? Sports Video Library, what's going on? Canes Nation. Preston, what's going on, my man? Boogie Main, Rude Vol, everyone, Nasty Nate. Hit the like button. You know the damn deal here. Hit it. And get your questions when we're done here in about 20, 25 minutes. This is just tough. Utah, I just haven't seen enough to me to back them here. Even at home, the elevation, they've always been good. I haven't been crazy about this team scoring so far this year. Carlson's got to be huge. He's their best player. He has to have a big night. And it's not I love Arizona's defense, but they could just outscore this Utah team. The road, everything about it. This is a game I want to be off. I want to watch. This would be big wins for Arizona. Go in there and win just by 13 or something like that and get, mid 80s, something like that'd be good for them because they've looked phenomenal so far this year. Some people like Utah first half. I mean, yeah, when you have a team like Arizona, top 3, 2 in the country coming in, they want to beat them. So hopefully this Utah team that struggles and misses a lot of shots can drop on this Arizona team and on their defense.
Definitely. It's this is a fascinating game here. Again, Arizona definitely to me better than Utah. Are they 7 points better? And it is coming off the Maui trip. So there's negatives for Arizona too, but I just don't know if Utah's good enough to hang with Arizona for 40 minutes. I just don't. And I'm not, and I like Arizona enough where, hey, I don't need to bet against them unless I have a damn good reason to. And I'm not
That's
sure
how
I have
I feel.
A good reason to.
I don't blame anyone thinking Utah can hang maybe early on in this game, first half. I just don't want to put my money on that today.
No. Need to see more from the Utes. All right, Arizona State, Colorado. We've got Colorado 4-point home favorites, 140.5 the total. So Arizona State's been Jekyll and Hyde. There's no question about that. They've had some terrific highs, some shaky lows as well, like losing to Texas Southern in their second game of the year, struggling with Northern Arizona. They've had some tough games as well, but they also have some nice wins. They beat VCU on a neutral court. They beat Michigan and blew out Michigan 87-62. And I think those 2 wins really got things going for Arizona State. And then they blew out Grambling and Alcorn State their last 2 games at home, winning by 31 and by 32, winning and covering with ease there. So 4 straight wins and 4 straight point spread covers for the Sun Devils. I like Arizona State here getting 4.5. I think they're ready to. I don't know how good Colorado is yet either. I know they had the win against A&M, which was impressive, and the Yale victory in their last game. But we also saw, and they obviously had a nice win against Tennessee. And I think that Tennessee victory in particular kind of has Colorado power rated higher than maybe they should be. Let's not also forget that second game of the year, they played Grambling State. Somehow they lost that game 83-74. So Colorado's had some blemishes either that aren't too good. Boise's had some up and downs this year, and they lost to Boise on a neutral court as well, 68-55. So it's been all over the place for this Colorado team. When I look at Arizona State, the Cambridge brothers there, Devin and Desmond, are really starting to come into their own, playing well. Frankie Collins at the point guard spot, along with DJ Horn in the backcourt, have been solid for Arizona State. And when I look at Colorado here so far coming into this game, I wonder if they're going to be able to score the basketball enough, because offense has been hard to come by. And don't look now, but Bobby Hurley's team, for the first time maybe in his tenure, they're playing some defense. They really are. I mean, 34 field goal percentage allowed, 34% so far this season. That's fourth in the country. They're number 3 in the country in terms of three-point defense. Arizona State allowing just 22.1% from three-point range. So I think Arizona State's in this game. A worst-case scenario, and I wouldn't even rule out the possibility they go into Boulder, win this game in outright fashion. Conor, what do you think here, Sun Devils and Buffaloes?
This game's interesting here. I don't know what to make of Colorado. Like you mentioned, they beat Tennessee, and I think this Tennessee team's pretty good, at least right now, especially defensively. We saw what they just did to Kansas. They lose to UMass, but they've always been. I don't think A&M's very good. They took care of them. We're finding out A&M might not be that good this year. And the last home game, the win over Yale by 3. The only problem, I like Arizona State a little bit too, is just the spot for them a little bit. Colorado's always been so good at home. Like, they've just been money for me. Back them, even laying points at Boulder, they've done really, really well. I don't want to lay 4.5, but I look the other way with Colorado. I don't trust them, though. So I can't bet this game, period.
So we have a lean to Colorado for Conor, and I like Arizona State. So we have mild disagreement there, mild difference of opinion. All right, next up, we've got, as we continue along here, I believe, we're going to Seton Hall and Kansas. Then we'll get back to the Pac-12. It's a very Pac-12 heavy night, and they're all conference games. You don't usually get conference games this early, but you got a bunch of Pac-12 conference games tonight. This is Seton Hall, Kansas, though, another one of these Big East, Big 12 matchups. We've got Kansas 10-point favorites at Fog Allen, 139 being the total. The numbers going up toward Kansas. They look real good. I will say that, really good. I mean, 7-1 straight up this season so far. 4-0 at home for the Jayhawks as well, straight up. They've definitely looked impressive. They have a win against Duke and NC State and Wisconsin on their resume. They did lose to Tennessee. Their one loss, 64-50. Bounced back strong on Monday night this week with a dominant 87-55 win against Texas Southern. I took a Texas Southern that night, just thinking maybe coming back off the road would be tricky for Kansas. Nope, they had no problem whatsoever. I got to take the 10, though, with Seton Hall in this one. You know Seton Hall is going to try to slow it down, keep this to a half-court type of game, rely on that defense. Shaheen Holloway, of course, here now as the head coach after a great run with St. Peter's. You know what he's going to try to do, and that's try to make Kansas try to execute their offense in the half court, and that's the key. You cannot allow Kansas to beat you in transition, or else they could really hurt you that way. Seton Hall's already looked like the kind of defensive squad you would expect them to be under a coach like Holloway, 39th in the country in field goal percentage. Defense so far 15th in the country, 3-point percentage defense. Their offense has been a little bit more shaky, obviously, Seton Hall. So, if you're going to take the double digits with them like me, you're going to hope that defense comes to play tonight. I think they can frustrate Kansas a little bit, hang around in this kind of point spread range. Don't forget how good of an underdog Shaheen Holloway was as a head coach with St. Peter's. Now, sometimes that doesn't always translate to the next destination, but he's always been that kind of head coach where when his teams are catching points with that slow pace and that defense, that's when you want to buy in. So I'm taking the Hall here, plus 10 with the Pirates in this one. What do you think here, Conor?
When this first came out last night, I mean, I saw 7. I guess some places are 8. This was early. I thought Kansas was the move here. I think this is a bounce back for them. I've been a little disappointed in Seton Hall after the bank there versus Memphis. Just a bad loss at home to Oklahoma by 13, then Siena by 5. I watched the Iowa game earlier, too, last month. I believe they lost by 15. They're having troubles in the backcourt. Richmond, they thought was going to be, he just hasn't taken off. And they don't have really a true number one scorer on this team right now. And I think they'll figure it out. It's early. We're still real early in the season with the Seton Hall. The problem is this line's moved to 10. I still think Kansas wins this game. I don't know about laying the 10 now. But one problem too, I mentioned is Kansas. Early too here, but bad free throw team so far. So if this is close to the number and there's some free throws late, that's not good news for them. So initially, I like Kansas. I would have laid it 7 or 8. Not so much at 10 here.
All right. Next up, we've got, as we continue along, back to the Pac-12 we go. Washington, Oregon State. We've got the Huskies here on the road at Corvallis, laying 5, 132.5 the total in this one. And I guarantee it, public perception was negative on Oregon State. They obviously had a nightmare season last year. 2 years ago, of course, they made that incredibly shocking run to the Final Four in the NCAA tournament. And last year, everything fell apart for Wayne Tinkle and company. I mean, they just had injuries. They just obviously didn't play the way they did 2 years ago. But I think people left a sour opinion on Oregon State coming out of last year. It carried over into this year. But this year they've been all over the place. Honestly, they beat Tulsa in they won their first 3 games. They had a loss against Portland State as 7.5-point favorites at home. Then they played Duke on the neutral floor as 21.5-point dogs, and they nearly beat Duke. They lose by 3. They end up losing at Florida against Florida on that neutral court, 81-68, which isn't really a bad result. Florida's pretty good. But then the last game on that floor, again, Portland State, they played them twice and lost to them a second time, 83-71. So interesting what we get here from Oregon State. But now we go into conference play. I'm kind of tempted to take the home underdog here, 5, 5.5. I mean, when it comes to Washington, they've won and covered 3 straight. It's been good. Their only loss was 8-point favorites to Cal Baptist. They lost 73-64. But they haven't had a true road game yet. This will be it. Not that home gym for Oregon State with the way they've played the last year and a bit is going to be raucous or anything, but still it's going to be their first true road game. The one thing with Oregon State here that I've noticed the last few games is the defense has picked up a little bit, playing better. Last 3 games, they only gave up the 51 to Duke, 54, I should say, to Duke. They gave up 81 to Florida, 83 to Portland State. The last 2 not as good, but keep in mind, Florida plays with pace, pretty good offense. Portland State plays extremely fast, more possessions in that game. So the numbers and the points allowed are going to look a little bit skewed when you play a team like that. Overall, the defensive numbers aren't terrible for Oregon State. I mean, they're 76th in the country in field goal percentage allowed. That's not bad at all. Washington's been very good defensively. So you wonder if this Oregon State offense is going to be able to score enough. Certainly something you want to factor in here going into this game. But when push comes to shove here, when I look at this matchup here, I've got to lean a little bit toward Oregon State here as a home underdog in this one. Washington long term, even you go back to last year, 2 years ago, laying points on the road's not necessarily been their strong suit. They weren't a great road favorite last year, Washington. That might carry over into this one. I think I can make a case, not a big one, but a small case, small bet for me here on the Beavers plus the 5. What do you think here, C-Mac?
Yeah, Washington, I think it's been pretty good. We've seen St. Mary's kind of slip up after I thought they came out hot. Washington took care of business against Seattle just last game after, I think it was a tie game or maybe they're down by 1, pulled away in the second half in that one. I just think those losses to Portland State, which I do think's better, though, this year, Portland State, are still ugly for Oregon State. The close game with Duke, I think they beat Tulsa. They've had some decent wins. But you mentioned they're back at home here. I think that was kind of one of those loser bracket games. They lost. That was just horrible. Back home here, back to a play like you talked about. Washington getting a lot of love right now, and I'm not buying it. I want Oregon State plus the 5. I'll have some money line as well.
Money line too. All right, going for it. Conor Mack here with this. By the way, I should point out I have the money line too. I have the money line on every underdog I bet, but it's always a small percentage. It's like 90% spread, 10% money line. That's usually the percentage split for me with the underdogs.
I mostly do. Sometimes I don't, but for the most part, I do.
Yeah. So when I say anytime you hear me on this show say I like a team plus the points, I've got 10% of that team on the money line. Even Seton Hall, same thing. I've got 10% on the money line, 10% on plus 10 with Seton Hall. And same thing with Oklahoma State. I'll put 10% of whatever I put on that bet on the money line. All right, next up, we continue along, staying in the Pac-12 for our last two games of the marquee game segment of the show. UCLA, Stanford. We've got UCLA road favorites here in Palo Alto, laying 6.5, 136 the total. I talked about not trusting Washington as a Pac-12 conference road favorite in the last game. I am going to trust UCLA here as Pac-12 conference road favorites. I like them. I don't think things are right at the moment with Stanford. I've not liked what I've seen from this basketball team consistently. I mean, the Memphis game, the offense was just non-existent. They struggle to get past a rotten Florida State team, 70-60. They lose to Ole Miss, who I think have been up and down this year. They get drubbed by San Diego State. They weren't ready for that game. I thought they could hang with Wisconsin, and I took them the very first game of the season. And I thought Stanford would be pretty good coming into the year. And then they disappointed me in that very first game. They were 4-point dogs against Wisconsin. They lost by 10. I just haven't liked what I've seen right now from this Stanford Cardinal team. They haven't reached the NCAA tournament in 8 years as well. So, Gerard Haas, at what time does the hot seat, start to get a little warmer on him? I mean, it's just it's a situation where, you look at it, even their top three scorers, they're only averaging 10 points per game, and they're all shooting, mid-30s. They're not even shooting a high percentage. Their offense has just not really been strong. And if they're not going to score points here against UCLA is going to be able to score enough to gain separation, in my opinion, in this game. When you look at what they've done offensively, they've had no problem scoring in many of their games. I mean, their lowest point total this year was 70 against Illinois. They put up 75 on Baylor, pretty good team. And then the last two games, Bellarmine and Pepperdine, 181, shooting the ball well. Stanford is just not a team, for me to want to back Stanford, I got to trust them to have a real chance to win this game. I don't think they do. I think they're just not ready at this point in time to be playing a team like UCLA. And I think for UCLA, you look at, they've played Baylor, Illinois, tough opponents, bigger games so far, but this should be a game where a spot where we get focus from UCLA. It's your first conference game of the season. You should be wanting to play well, get off to a good start. So I'm going to lay the 6 here with the Bruins on the road. And it's not like that Stanford home court is going to be one that's jumping and loud and really going to provide a true boost for Stanford. Not by any stretch of the imagination. What do you think here, CMAC?
Yeah, initially I get this, this is, from 5, 4.5, 5, now basically 6.5 everywhere. UCLA, the better team. Right now, Stanford's a team, as a dog here at home, I want to take. I don't trust their offense. I just haven't seen enough. It's been too ugly. 48 that Memphis game. I did get 70 on Florida State. But I just don't trust them. The numbers are just bad here. All these, 250s, 270s. The one thing is they're still solid defensively. Stanford team's usually pretty good, but is that going to be enough? Man, I'm not so sure. This is just a game I want to be off. That I'll definitely be watching though.
Final game of this marquee game segment, and then we'll open it up for Q&A, as well as any games that we haven't talked about yet that Conor likes, and also games that I like. We've got Washington State, Oregon. The Ducks, 4.5 point home favorites here in Eugene. The total 135.5, pretty much across the board in this one. Washington State coming into this game where they have had an up and down start. They are 3-2 on the season. The wins coming against Eastern Washington, as well as Detroit, 96-54. They really beat down Detroit in their last game, and then they had a win against Texas State. They lost, though, to Prairie View A&M, 70-59, and they also lost to Boise State, 71-61. So no doubt, Washington State has been all over the map this year. We'll see how they fare here in this one. They do have a good backcourt. I like the Jade Mullins, TJ Bamba combination for the Cougars. It's a really good backcourt. They're going to be tested here by Oregon. Does have some size in the low post. That could be a challenge here, but they have been littered with suspensions, injuries, guys that haven't been cleared to play, and it continues to be a problem for Oregon. And Dana Altman even said it the other day with the way his team is just scuffling mightily that, we're just not going to be a good team for a little while. He just came right out and said it. I like it. And that's why I always respect Dana Altman. He is honest. He knows this team is not in a good way right now. Even the Villanova win, Connor Mack. Villanova's not rip-roaring it up here early in the season. I don't even think we can get too excited about Oregon winning that game. The other games were just a disaster. They lose as 15.5-point favorites to Cal Irvine. They lose to Houston. They get blown out by by UConn. They lose to an injury-riddled and depleted Michigan State team, the same Michigan State team that's injury-riddled and depleted that got whipped and blown out at Notre Dame last night. So, you look at this game here, and it's like, I'm not laying 4.5 with Oregon here. I know Washington State, there's been some inconsistent performances on their resume so far this season. Make no mistake about it. But I'm taking the 4.5 here with the Cougars in this one. Daring Oregon, and they're struggling mightily, Oregon Ducks team to win by margin. I'm going to dare them to do so. And keep in mind, too, this is a horrible, and I mean awful, free throw shooting team, Oregon, so far this year. 61.6% from the free throw line. That's 341st in the country. Like I say, you want to lay points with these horrible free throw shooting teams. That's another log thrown onto the fire in terms of the concerns about laying points with Oregon right now. What do you think here, CMAC? Washington State, Oregon.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be off here. I do like Wazoo a little bit. You talked about the Oregon, just not a good basketball team right now. Just dealing with some stuff. This team is tall. I think down the line they will be better. We always mention they're a little bit better once February and March comes around. And I think that's what Altman said is true, but it seems like they're just in disarray. If they'd been playing a little bit better basketball early on, it seems like you get 7 in this spot, 7 or 8. And that's where I'd look at Washington State. And they've been inconsistent. They've been shooting it, scoring at times. I want to see a little more out of Wazoo. I'm going to be off. I don't mind your play, though, with Washington State. Until Oregon turns it around, I don't want anything to do with them.
Yeah, I think for me, it's just, and not to mention, too, I believe Oregon's coming home off the neutral court road as well. Yeah, absolutely. They've been in a neutral court environment for a while as well. So, this is definitely a negative travel and scheduling situation as well for Oregon, added on to the fact that they're not playing good basketball and they're laying points. So all that has me on the Washington State side here as the road underdog in this game. All right, there we go. That is the marquee games for Thursday night. CMAC, the floor is yours. Any other games you want to talk about that we haven't hit up yet?
Yeah, let's just rip through a couple here. I like Belmont. I haven't bet this yet. This has come down. I look at the team total, though. I don't know if it's 75.5. I knew it'd probably be there. I was looking for like a 73.5, 72.5. But they should score here. I think they cover this one. I'm leaning Belmont. Haven't pulled the trigger in that one. Utah State, Utah Tech. I like the over in that game there. I'm leaning Pacific. Are you? Okay. Yep. I'm leaning Pacific a little bit. I don't trust UC Davis. This team doesn't shoot free throws that great. They kind of blow some leads at times. I haven't bet that one either. And last, I'm on an ugly dog. I'm on Lamar. I don't trust Texas State. I'm going to take the 13 with Lamar at home. I know they got beat up by SMU, but they played some good games. And I think at home, I would never take them on the road. But give me the 13 with the ugly dog in Lamar.
All right, there we go. A few games from Connor Mack, and I like a lot. I like that Utah Tech, Utah State over. That's on my card. I was going to mention that, and definitely I agree. Two teams that'll push the basketball. I trust both teams a little bit more at the offensive end right now. So definitely I like points to be scored in that game. I don't hate the Lamar look either. I didn't bet it, but I definitely lean that way, Lamar. Texas State, do we trust them in that kind of price range right now with what we've seen out of the Bobcats this year? I'm not so sure we do with their current form at the moment. So what else did I like? Let me just get the list. And it's always a pretty long list of games. I like Youngstown State at a pick'em to get the victory against Northern Kentucky. Northern Kentucky not only struggling, but a little bit banged up right now. Northern Kentucky, the Norse, going into that game against and I like Youngstown State. I backed Youngstown State a couple of times now. I know this is not asking them to win on the road. It's a bit of a different story, but I think they're just better right now than Northern Kentucky. So I like Youngstown State there at around a pick 'em against NKU in that game. Someone mentioned Cornell, Delaware. I lean Delaware, but the number's already moved. What I like even more is the total. I like the over. There should be a lot of points. We know Cornell plays mad pace one of the faster tempos in the country. Delaware has been able to score pretty nicely this year. Should see a lot of points. High-paced game. Lots of points there, both teams. So Cornell, Delaware over the total, 154.5, 155. I do like that quite a bit. I know we've seen some unders with Cornell, but again, they're playing Monmouth, can't score. Canisius wants to slow it down. And I think this time you're going to get back to more of an up and down type of game here with Cornell, Delaware tonight. Anything else here? I did bet a little bit, even though the Cleveland State is better, but they're also a team that could be a little bit short-handed tonight. Bet a little Oakland Golden Grizzlies plus the 4 in that game against Cleveland State. Detroit Mercy Titans. I know they got just destroyed by Washington State. We talked about that, but now they are trying to lick their wounds, and they're a better team than they showed in that game. And IPFW laying points, no, I'm not ready to trust them in that role. So I like Detroit plus 4 at IPFW in that game. What else did we well, you brought up Pacific UC Davis. Glad you did. I am on Pacific plus 6.5 and the over in that game. I think you're going to see points as well. Pacific and UC Davis, they're a very good offensive team this year, Pacific Tigers. So, and I think that offense too against that UC Davis, they've got some matchup advantages that can work for them. I think they keep that game competitive. Pacific plus the points. I think that game goes over 154 as well, Pacific and UC Davis. So that's definitely it for the main board. There's only a couple of added board games, and the only one I bet on the added board, Conor mentioned Lamar. I don't hate that look. I lean it, but I didn't bet it, but I leaned to Lamar there. The only thing I bet on the added board tonight was Denver and Houston Christian over, and that one is at 152 right now. Pioneers get it done offensively. Houston Christian used to be called Houston Baptist. For some reason they changed their name this year, Houston Christian, but still that same style of play, up and down, take the first shot. Not a very good defensive team, so I like points in that game with Denver, Houston Christian. That's about it.
I like it. Yeah, I'm still thinking about what do you think of Valpo? I mean, they had that great game against James Madison, but they were ugly early on to start the year. Do you like anything in that game?
Tough one. Honestly, it's a tough one for me because I have a hard time trusting Belmont laying this kind of price this year.
That's why I look team total. Yeah.
Which I think is the best way. I mean, you look at them laying points; they've been a disaster for the most part, other than the Howard game. Howard's the only game they covered as favorites this year. Texas State 4-point favorites lost outright. 3-point favorites at Lipscomb lost outright. 6-point favorites to Ohio early in the season. They won by a single point. They have not been good laying points this year, Belmont. Now Valpo is, like you said, they've got their own share of issues. This year. I mean, they haven't been impressive at times. They've also been a point spread disaster for the most part. They've only covered one game this year, no doubt, but Belmont's been bad as favorites. So that's why I'm off the game.
I'm going to stay off.
Valpo. Yeah, and I'm not trusting Belmont as favorites. So, but Belmont team total, I'm with Conor in that regard. If you're going to endorse Belmont tonight, look at the team total over. Don't trouble yourself with worrying about laying the points.
Cool.
Milwaukee, yes, that's a good one. Milwaukee Panthers there and Green Bay in that one. We've seen, I think, a little bit of a line movement there with Milwaukee and Green Bay, a little in-state rivalry action there in that one. That one's interesting because you look at the form right now. Milwaukee's playing well. 3 straight wins, 3 straight covers going into this game. Now they're taking money. 7 points, road favorites. Green Bay, it's been rough. I mean, there really is no denying that whatsoever. 80-53, 92-58, 81-65 to Queens College, which is a newbie to Division I college basketball. 23-point loss to Utah Valley. 14-point. They haven't even been competitive in any of these games. There's no way I would endorse Green Bay. The only concern is it's this in-state rivalry game, and you have to treat it kind of like rivalry weekend in college football. Dumb shit, stupid shit can happen. If Green Bay stays in this game start to finish or wins it, it wouldn't completely shock me. But if you're betting this game based on form, you could only endorse Milwaukee. And you got to lay 7 on the road in a rivalry spot. But I'm telling you what, Green Bay's almost unbackable right now. I'd still, by default, I have to lean to the road favorite here.
Man, this is ugly. Don't play the game, like you mentioned. Yeah. Milwaukee, just off their form, but 7.5. This has moved up to Green Bay. Has been god awful. They're one game but it was Wisconsin. It was probably just asleep at the wheel where they lost by 11, 56-45, I think it was. But other than that, just got blown out. So, yeah, off.
Yeah, JPZ, I wouldn't talk you out of Wofford. Blue Hose have been brutal on the road. Presbyterian. I mean, they have been one
They haven't
blowout
been
after
good this
another.
year.
No,
Yeah.
they haven't. I mean, they lost by 27 at Charlotte. Obviously, by 31 at UAB, you expect that. UAB is an excellent team. But what's the excuse for losing by 20 at East Carolina? That's kind of starting over this year. Or losing by 12 at Citadel. I mean, they have just not been competitive, Presbyterian, in a lot of these games. Wofford is, your typical Wofford. They're a very good team in the SoCon, once again, like they always are. And they're going to play good offense. They're going to be efficient. Scoring and shooting the basketball already this year. They're top 100 in field goal percentage and 3-point defense, and Presbyterian's lousy defending, and they're even lousier offensively. So it's a steep number, but you're right at JPZ. I wouldn't talk you out of Wofford here. I'd only lay the points in that game.
Definitely.
I think I'd lean Manhattan, young Speedy. Remember early in the season, they dealt with a lot, right? Masiello leaves, the assistants leave, coaching staff in flux, just a chaotic shit show of a start to the season. And to be fair, to be 2-3 at this point, that's actually an accomplishment, given everything, the upheaval in the coaching staff coming into the year. And they've kind of settled down a little bit and played better. They've covered 4 straight. Against VCU, they were a big dog, but they hung in there. They almost beat Fairleigh Dickinson. They lost in overtime at Northeastern. They beat Army. Army's a decent team in the Patriot League. They have 4-point dogs. They beat them. You're seeing progress. You're seeing improvement out of Manhattan. And sometimes when you see these teams, Conor, Mac, they show these little signs of improvement. Odds makers don't catch up to it right away. And you can ride these teams for a little bit. And I'm not ready to trust Fairfield. I like Fairfield. They're a decent team, but points on the road, laying them, I'm not ready to trust them here. So I do think there's a case you can make for Manhattan here. Not betting it, but I lean that way.
Yeah, no, I bet this game. This was the ultimate coin flip for me. And if I had to, I would take the home team, get in the 1.5. But I don't love it at all. This could go either way. That game.
Yeah, Texas Creighton is just from a side perspective. Situationally, it favors Texas, so I'd lean to lay in the points. But I'm not laying that many against Creighton, not with how well they've played.
But and I lean the other way.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can get there.
Yeah, and Creighton coming off the Maui trip, that's a concern. I just like that game to get over the total. Maybe it won't fly over the total, but, it'll just take both teams getting to 70, and it'll get over the total. I think it's 74, 72, some kind of score in that range tonight, maybe, with Texas and Creighton. I think it can just get up and over that total. It's only the total that I ended up betting in that game. JT, I could only look over with Arizona games, and I did bet a little over 154 with Arizona and Utah, which we talked about earlier in the show. All right, I think just making sure, I think we got most of the questions. I don't think there's many games left that we didn't talk about anyway because it's a shorter Northwestern State plus 12.5. Someone asked about that. It looks like Robert Franklin asking about Northwestern State getting the big number against Stephen F. Austin. I get it that Northwest is not one of the better Northwestern State teams so far. But the 5-2. But again, if they played anybody of significance, I would say the answer to that would be no. Although they did have a nice win against TCU, 64-63 earlier this season. Stephen F. Austin in this one, laying a big number here. I think it's too big. I'd honestly lean a little bit to Northwestern State here, plus 12.5 in this game, but not a game I'm going to get involved in.
Yeah, I'm not at all. Hit up Mills here. He has the over. We know Cleveland State plays so slow, but Oakland, just no defense.
No.
So even Cleveland State, I think, that game could get over the 137. I didn't bet it, but I still didn't get Oakland just not playing any defense much at all. And they should be able to score. And initially, you're on Oakland, right, Ian?
I am on Oakland because there's some injuries with Cleveland State tonight.
Yes.
And Oakland can score. I mean, I'd never mind taking Oakland when they're catching points. I won't have any piece of them when they're laying points. But I think tonight with that, their defense is lousy. There's no denying that whatsoever. It's terrible. But they have some shooters. They have some scores. There's a little bit of a vulnerability with the short-handed Cleveland State team tonight. And remember, this is now teams that are more familiar with playing each other as well. Oakland and Cleveland State, they play each other quite a bit. So I think Oakland plus the points. This is the buy low spot for Oakland, and their offense is capable. And now Cleveland State's got a couple injuries they're dealing with.
Good move, too, because we're seeing 3.5s now, too. And especially if you could have got that 6 or 5. Yeah, Star Child. I think it gets over too with Belmont. Just go with the over. I'm gonna wait on that game. I might go with the over because I think Belmont can't hold a lead, and but Valpo struggled to score, but they're horrible defensively. I still didn't get over that number,
Yep, there
141.
we go. All right, awesome stuff. Thanks to the chat, always delivering the goods and keeping us on our toes. Is rapid fire going through all these games that get asked about in the chat. We appreciate it very much. 190 live viewers. Hit the like button. Make sure you do that. We will wrap up with best bets in just a second. But first, messages from Manscaped and Southtown 101. Southtown 101, when you're in San Antonio, Texas, stop in. Great food, drinks, live music, DJs, karaoke. Southtown 101, manscaped.com. Promo code PubSports, 20% off your purchase of anything on the site using promo code PubSports. Yes, there is a live NFL betting show. Bills Patriots tonight. Check it out here on Pub Sports Radio later on tonight. Every Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night. All the primetime NFL games. There's always a live bet stream right here on Pub Sports Radio. All right, best bets to wrap up this edition of Net Profit. Conor, Mac, we'll start with you. What do you like for best bet?
Yeah, let's go with a couple here. Oregon State +5. I even, we talked about money line. I think it went outright. And Utah State, Utah Tech over 146.
One side, one total. Oregon State plus the points, and Utah Tech, Utah State over the total for Conor, Mac. Couple of best bets. My best bet, it's going to be Washington State +4.5 against Oregon. It's just fading a bad Oregon team, laying points, coming off the road too, off neutral court tournaments. Not even a good scheduling spot with a bad team that's shorthanded, that's not playing well, not defending well, not shooting well consistently. I know there's some, up and down all over the map results sometimes with Washington State this year, but I'll still trust them here getting 4.5 against the struggling Oregon Ducks. Oregon's going to be a team I'll be backing, I'm sure, like I always do in February and March when they play their best basketball, which is usually every year. That's when they come to life and they get red hot. Now's not the time to be betting Oregon. We'll take Washington State, the Cougars, +4.5 for my best bet for this Thursday college basketball card. Yes, we talked Cornell, Delaware. I'm that heat earlier. I lean Delaware. I did bet the over, just the total. That's all I bet for that game with Delaware and Cornell. Yeah. Oh, we didn't hit Mount St. Mary's, St. Peter's. I lean St. Peter's, but laying 3. It's Mount St. Mary's has actually been a bit of a surprise. So
I've been surprised too. Off. Yeah, that's how I feel. Like I kind of lean Mount St. Mary's. I don't love it, but I've been surprised how well they played so far this year. So I can't wait, to run through, check that game out in the box score as always. Love it. Love college basketball.
No, we're not head-to-head, Rem Most. Conor Mac is on Oregon State plus the points against Washington for his best bet. I'm on Washington State. All right, Washington State. Don't get them confused. Washington State plus the points against Oregon. So there you go. Those are the best bets there. And Conor also threw out the Utah Tech, Utah State over as well.
I might be real quick. You're 4.5. Obviously, the late game. I love it on the West Coast. I kind of lean to this under in that Washington State Oregon game. I don't trust these teams to score.
Yeah, that could be true. I mean, it's weird with Oregon. There's some games where they fly over the total. They never play fast though. They don't play fast under Dana Altman. Yeah. It's the weird games where they turn it over and it's easy baskets for the other team, and then they have these anomalies where they just go nuts and start shooting lights out. But normally they are trying to play the pace of an under team. So we'll see if that happens tonight against Washington State. All right, there we go. That's a wrap. Thanks to everyone in the chat for joining us. Hit the like button on the way out. Connor and I will be back tomorrow. Final show of the week, 5 p.m. Eastern. College basketball net profit on Friday, and we'll be back with you for that tomorrow. So tune in for that. Busy day tomorrow, because I got NBA Pub Hub before that, and I'm also be on with Jimmy the Bag tomorrow, betting with the bag, my usual Friday appearance. So make sure you join us for that tomorrow. Busy day for yours truly right here on Pub Sports Radio. And, of course, we're also back, Connor and I, Saturday morning, college football, Pub Hub with Big Ragu and DJ Big Boss. Will get you all set for a big, massive conference championship Saturday in college football. Looking forward to a lot of those games. And, by the way, make sure if you don't want to wait till Saturday to hear what we think about those games, check out Hitting the Books from earlier this week. All the clips are up there, reviewing every conference championship game. So make sure you tune into that if you missed it earlier this week. For Connor Mack, I'm Ian Cameron. Let's have a great Thursday night. Enjoy the games and good luck. And we will talk to you again tomorrow for another edition of College Basketball Net Profit right here on Pub Sports Radio.